Hello and welcome or welcome back to Slightly Spoiled. My name is Elise. It's been a long time. I'm so happy that you're here. I didn't mean to take this long of a break. I tried to explain this in the episode and I ended up sounding totally incoherent. But basically, I set myself a really unrealistic goal of doing 2 episodes a week that were both recaps. And just with how long every recap takes, writing the script, consuming the content, whatever, it was just totally impossible. I caught myself up in a loop of either spending every waking moment on this podcast and still not reaching my goals, and then beating myself up for that and totally avoiding doing the podcast. So I'm back in 2026. The name of the game is going to be consistency. Okay, I'm aiming for 1 episode a week, mostly recaps, but also some kind of easier to produce episodes like this one, which is going to be every book I read in 2025. Because it's been so long since I last made an episode, I was so rusty and made a million mistakes. My video quality is kind of messed up. I actually broke my computer in the process. Actually, it wasn't my fault, but my computer is currently getting repaired. So that really mucked up the whole editing process. I lost my thumbnail, so I have to redo that. And then most importantly, and really the reason why I'm here right now is because the audio is totally jacked up. I'm talking into the wrong side of the microphone for a lot of this episode. So I had to really bring the sound up. Mostly there's just like weird leveling stuff that I'm trying my best to work out. And then a couple times in the episode, there is a lot of background noise, but it dies down pretty quickly every time. So I hope that you can be patient with me and understand that, this is just a learning curve that I'm going back through because it's been so long and that's totally my fault. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I didn't want this intro to be too long, but here we are anyway. I'm excited to be back. Hello and welcome back to Slightly Spoiled. I am your host, Elise, and it has been a really long time since I sat here. I've never sat here before. This is a new background. What do we think? I think it's way better. I don't know why it never occurred to me. Today we're going with a classic. I'm going to talk about every book I read last year, okay? Who doesn't love these? I literally would watch these all year long if that existed, but that's not the way it works. Also, new segment that I'm introducing starting today, and my first segment, really, if you think about it, is going to be what is spoiling me today. So like today I'm feeling spoiled by blank, and it's just something I'm liking right now. It could be a food, it could be a book, movie, or TV show. It could be an experience, a product. One thing that is constant about me is that I am going through a phase. I'm going through a food hyperfixation. I'm wearing the same lipstick every day, whatever. What I'm feeling spoiled by today is my sourdough journey, okay? I made my first sourdough loaf a couple days ago. Insert photo here. How gorgeous is that? I know. I also made pancakes with my sourdough discard, which were delicious. I did not take a photo, but they looked like pancakes. My mother-in-law is a sourdough queen, which, speaking of which, I'm a married woman now. I got married in October. Erin and I did a little small elopement ceremony with just close family. We went to Central Park. It was gorgeous. I'm married now. I have a mother-in-law, and she makes sourdough bread all the time. She has a sourdough starter. She kindly gifted me some probably a year ago, which I promptly killed. I neglected it. This past holiday, she was so kind as to gift me some more, and I said, you know what? Yeah, it's time. I'm gonna become a sourdough girl. And I totally understand why the people who make sourdough bread don't shut up about it, because what a rush. And it does take a lot of time. It's actually so easy, or at least the loaf that I made was really, really easy and took almost no effort. It just takes like many hours of your time, like you're checking on it all the time. But anyway, it's a new era of my life. I can feel myself waltzing into it, and I'm really happy about it. On to the main event, which is every book I read in 2025. 40 books, 3 of which I own. I have them right here, which is pitiful. Okay, so that's one goal for 2026. I'm going to be reading more of the books that I actually own. I'm always on that hamster wheel, that Libby Kindle hold hamster wheel. And I also went many months of this year without really picking up a book at all or reading like 1 book a month. Most of what I read was in January, February, and November, December. And that's pretty normal for me also. Like I have lots of hobbies. Sometimes I'm listening to audiobooks. Sometimes I'm listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos or whatever. Starting with kind of general fiction, I read 4 books from this category, 2 of which are like contemporary and kind of genre blends or like genre adjacent. And then 2 are kind of serious novels, okay? The first one is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. And we're starting it off with an unpopular opinion. This was one of the most popular books of 2025, and it really did not do it for me. It's a book about a pair of competitive ice dancers and kind of like their relationship as well as just the competition in general. They go to the Olympics, and it's structured kind of like a Taylor Jenkins Reid-esque story. So there's some interviews and things like that. I tend to really love books about elite athletes or just athletes in general. I never really played sports growing up. And so that mindset and like that type of character to follow I find really interesting, as well as books about athletics just tend to be really well paced because there's a lot of different competitions, high stakes. I was really into this book for the first half or so, and then I suddenly just got sick of it because it was too much shock factor, too much toxicity. I just reached my limit, and then I was like, okay, when is this over? So if it had been a little bit shorter, I probably would have rated it a lot more highly. I get the hype, but it disappointed me in the end. Next, we have The Compound by Aisling Rawle, which I love. This, according to Goodreads, is a sci-fi book. It actually won the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I'm very excited about because I think this is an excellent book. But this is so not a sci-fi. This is like contemporary fiction leaning, I would say, kind of soft horror. This book is about a reality competition show, which is another premise that I'm like, if you do this right, there's just nothing better. It's so entertaining. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Love Island, which it definitely has elements of, but it's primarily a show about survival. All of these people, the contestants, are put onto a compound together, and they're not allowed to talk about their past lives or like their lives in the outside world, what they do for a living, relationships, etc. And also the compound has nothing. Like, it doesn't even have doors, it doesn't have furniture, no food. And so they all have to team up and complete these challenges that are given by the producers in order to earn things that they need to survive, and later also things that they want. There's kind of an influencer aspect to the individual challenges because it'll be like, do such and such thing and you'll win this gorgeous bathing suit. And then they'll be like, thank you to Revolve for giving me this bathing suit. And it's just, I don't know, it was so interesting, and it felt simultaneously kind of crazy, but also not crazy at all. Like, this show totally could really exist. And I thought it had a lot of interesting things to say about different kind of character archetypes, the dynamics between men and women in dating and also just in the real world. It had kind of a Lord of the Flies element, so that like power dynamic struggle situation. It just had so much that I love. And this also does have a really good audiobook. I'm the kind of person, I will turn on an audiobook and within 2 minutes, I'm like, I don't like that narrator. I can't listen to it. So it is significant when I love an audiobook narrator. And I thought this one worked really well in that format. And I'll try to call attention to other ones that I feel that way about because, again, I'm picky. Next, we have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, the first of my 2 serious novels. I also listened to the audio of this along with the book, and I think that is such a fun way to read. I think people call it immersive reading. I'm going to be doing more of that, but I really liked the guy who read this. He just had a really, I don't know, nice, like kind of gritty voice. You follow a boy named Theo. He's like 12 or 13 at the start of the novel, and something really traumatic happens to him. And so you watch him go through this thing and then deal with the aftermath. I really enjoyed the journey with him, especially soon after this traumatic event and like what happened and how it changed him as a person. This is kind of the first time that I've read a book and felt maternal toward a character. Like, I don't have children, and I don't know what it was about Theo. Just, I guess that he was so vulnerable. Maybe I'm like in that point of my life when I can start to feel like you could be my child. There are some decisions made by the author toward the end that I simply don't understand. There was a time jump that I thought, why did that happen? I feel like I don't even know Theo anymore because I've missed really important years of his life. I think Donna Tartt, on a sentence to sentence level, has some of the best writing of all time. I really, really love the way that she describes things. I still enjoyed myself, even though I kind of felt like she was losing it at times. And this has something in common with The Secret History, which is that it is a very slow novel that is largely about like conversations and character relationships and things like that. It doesn't have a strong plot, but there is a suspenseful element that the seeds are planted for at the beginning of the novel, and you don't know when it's gonna come into play or if it's going to come into play. I don't consider myself to love like lit fic, books that don't have a lot of plot, but if you give me something like that I'm feeling nervous about the entire book, I will keep reading. It's hard not to feel like a little bit of time was wasted, reading this book. But again, I still enjoyed myself and I still love Donna Tartt. And where is your 4th book, Donna? I know that I need to read The Little Friend, but also I've heard that I don't. So what do I do? The other more serious novel that I read this year was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This has been on my list for a really long time, and I felt a little bit confused by it. It is a really strange, bizarre gross book. It's just about a girl who decides to become a vegetarian and like what her family thinks about that and the problems it causes in her life, and also just problems that exist in her life separately from that. This book almost feels like 3 short stories put together. They're all connected, but you follow their 3 different stories, and I felt like at the end, I was not really satisfied with any of the 3 or where they went. It was thought-provoking. Like, I didn't have a bad time, but a lot of the time I was just like, what is going on? And maybe that's the appeal. Is that the appeal? Let's talk romance next. I feel like I have less to say about each individual book in this category. 2025 was the year for me of stepping out of contemporary romance, but just dipping my toe in and kind of gradually processing the fact that there is so much better out there than contemporary romance. I read 2 historical romances in 2025, and they were both really great. The first historical romance that I read was Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. I loved Indigo so much. I wanted to read more from her. And then I found this map on Reddit of all of her books because they're all kind of in like an interconnected universe. And I got so intimidated that I like literally could not pick a second book to read. And I just kind of forgot about her until the end of the year. And I was like, oh yeah, Beverly Jenkins, I need to pick up more. So again, 2026 will be the year for that. The 2 love interests in Indigo are both working on the Underground Railroad in different capacities. And I found that this just made me think a lot about the kind of unsung stories of history. Like, I totally learned about the Underground Railroad in school, but in my mind, it was this like cinematic, dramatic thing that was going on. And it was Harriet Tubman and like people, but mostly Harriet Tubman, you know? And this had me thinking more about like, wow, this was a lot of people's lives, and it was maybe mundane at times, and it was just like normal everyday life. And this was like what they dedicated themselves to. I don't know. I think that's the beauty of reading historical fiction of any variety, is that it just makes you think about like the normal people that didn't make history. You know what I mean? Anyway, I thought the love story between these 2 characters was beautiful. There was like a good amount of plot that I found really fascinating and compelling. I did think that this book took a while to wrap up. Like, I was really happy with it up until about 60%, and then it just kind of kept going. So again, Beverly Jenkins, I think we are going to get along really well, but I feel like this will not be my absolute favorite from her, but I loved it. And then the other one that I read is A Kiss at Midnight by Eloisa James, which is the first book in like a fairy tale series. They're like retellings of fairy tales. So technically it's not a historical novel because it doesn't take place in a specific year. But I thought this book was great too. It was a Cinderella retelling. I liked kind of the twists on that. I've never really gotten into retellings, and reading this, I was like, oh, that's why people like retellings, because it's fun to see kind of the different interpretations of those stories. I gave this the same rating as Indigo, but I liked Indigo more. It just like wasn't consistent. I loved it, and then I kind of stopped loving it as much, versus this one, I really liked it the whole way through. It was consistent. You know what I mean? But I will continue this series. The second one seems to be kind of everyone's favorite, which is Beauty and the Beast. So I'm excited about that. We'll definitely read more historical romance this year and more from both of these authors. I read one book that I'm categorizing as speculative romance, which is just like a book that follows the same structure as a romance, but has a little bit of fantasy in there. So it's not a fantasy book with romance. You see the distinction? But that book was The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. This is the 3rd book in the series that starts with the X-Hex. I think it's called Graves Glen series. I've been so lukewarm on this series so far. It's one of those that I just kind of kept reading because I knew exactly what I was going to get. And every now and then I would feel compelled to read basically a romance that's set in Halloween Town. That's what a lot of people describe it as. And it's totally dead on in my opinion. This was billed as a Christmas novel. It is so like barely Christmas, so just keep that in mind. But I'm really glad that that pushed me to pick up this book. I otherwise might not have, and it was by far my favorite in the series. I think because it is a time travel kind of speculative element versus like actual magic. I feel like this author's magic system was always very nebulous and I couldn't really get my mind around it. But this one, it's just kind of a classic time travel. Go back in time, you're like meeting your grandma, and oh my gosh, you have to make sure that your grandparents end up together, otherwise you're never gonna exist. It was that kind of thing, and it was really fun. I had a great time. I don't particularly love this author's writing style when it comes to like spicy stuff. I don't mind a little bit of a spicy scene here and there. I can get into it, you know, I'm an adult. I think this author just writes her characters a little too horny, like when they don't need to be horny. It's not during a romantic part or anything. It's just like everyone's always checking each other out. I'm not really into that, but I still think these books are really fun. And again, it was a great ending to the series. I'm glad I read it. Now let's talk the contemporaries, which is the biggest chunk. And I'm going to go in order from least to most
recommended. Okay, so first up we have Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Liese. I had never read this author before, and I don't think I will again. This was very early in the year, so it's a little bit fuzzy for me. I remember thinking the plot of this was really fun, like the beats of the romance, but the character was just really cringe. The girl, like, she was just kind of quirky and clumsy and oopsies, like, you know, that kind of girl. Millennial, cringy, like a Jessica Day type of thing, but just really cranked up to 100. I didn't really like that. I will say the spice was very well written in this book, which I never noticed because that's not really what I read for. But if it's what you read for, I would suggest Chloe Liese. I usually only notice those scenes if they're like painfully bad. And this one was actually really good. All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I listened to this book while I played Stardew Valley, which is my favorite video game ever. Okay, I go through really, really intense phases of Stardew Valley. Probably part of the reason I didn't read a lot of books this year, but we won't go into it. Whenever I try to listen to an audiobook while I play that game, I can't do it. It absorbs my brain so much that I'm like, oh, it's been 3 hours and I haven't heard a single word this narrator has said. So I think the fact that I listened to this while playing that game speaks to how truly dull and repetitive it was, because I was able to fully follow this book. I don't know that this author's for me. I know people love her. I want to love her because I love a slow burn pacing wise, but I feel like her books do not put enough other stuff to keep me going in the slow burn. Call me when she comes out with a fantasy romance or a romantic suspense or something, because I think the way her romances are paced and the way they're written, like, I'm into that. But other than that, it's just the characters' boring ass lives. The next two are both by Ali Hazelwood, who I find to be a very reliable and good and fun to read author. Problematic Summer Romance is an age gap relationship. It takes place at a wedding and it's like enemies to lovers kind of, but also they have a past together. The age gap really didn't make me uncomfortable, but the whole conflict of the book pretty much was that it made the man uncomfortable and he just like wouldn't hear reason about it. And it was kind of annoying to me. And then the other book is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, which got a lot of feathers in a ruffle. That's not an expression that people say, but a lot of people had a lot of feelings about Deep End because supposedly it's super, super sexy, spicy. And then a lot of people were like, no, it's not, because they're reading full smut all the time. Like, yes, this is a spicy book for general contemporary romance. For all of us normies who aren't out here reading erotica, you guys are reading dark romance where people are like stabbing each other in the bedroom. So yeah, this is a little bit more tame in that regard, but compared to the rest of Ali Hazelwood's books, it is spicier. Okay, so what do you want? The more I read Ali Hazelwood, I think her books could be a lot tighter. I feel as though the last 100 pages or so are always like, okay, let's wrap it up now. But again, I always have a good time. I like how she's evolving to kind of still have the STEM element in all of her books, but that's not the core thing. Like in this book, it's about a diver and I think he's a swimmer, and they're both like in science and they have connections to characters from Ali Hazelwood's previous works, but it's like not the main thing. I really like the way she's evolving and kind of expanding, but still remaining true to what we love about her. And finally, we have Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, which I would have told you was going to be my favorite contemporary romance of the year. And it kind of cleared everybody else, to be honest with you. She's probably my favorite writer ever. I don't know. I just really enjoy the way she structures her books. I love her rom-coms. I love just the perfect amount of depth that they have where there is some emotion, but it's not like melodrama. It's still fun and light. And this one had a lot of kind of drama from the past elements to it that I just ate up. It's not my favorite of hers, but they're all like really solid. She has not missed, and I'm glad she's taking a year off, okay? The woman needs a break. We will see you in 2027, Emily. Thank you so much for all you do. And lastly, for romance, we have the romantic suspense, which I feel has the potential to be my favorite romance genre because I love mystery and I love romance. I read from 2 different series this year. And I keep saying this year, you know what I mean though, 2025. I'm so early on in my journey with this that I'm just trying to get a lay of the land. I'm trying to figure out what's going on out there in romantic suspense land, and I feel like I'm getting somewhere. First up, we have the Deep Ops series by Rebecca Zanetti. I read 2 books, full-length novels, and then there's a novella in between. I think there were like 6 or 7 books total in the series, and I had a really good time with these. The writing isn't the best, but they're very like compelling and easy to read, and I specifically think Rebecca Zanetti writes a great suspense plot that happens to align really well with the types of things I like. The first book is a cult infiltration. It's all like undercover agents, basically. It's a crew of undercover people former law enforcement, former military, that type of thing. So the first one is Cult, and then the second one is The Irish Mob. So like that is just so the types of things I like to read. I do think that all of the romances are pretty much going to be the same because all of these men are kind of the same. It's like former undercover police officer, went through some kind of trauma, didn't think he was going to get back in the force, but there's just a case that he can't say no to, and he thinks he can't love, but this woman, like, I don't know, he's changing his mind about it. Like, it's all that. I read the first book and I was like, oh, I love this. And then I read the novella in between, which was not good, by the way. It was just trying to do way too much in way too short a time. And then the second book, I was like, oh, okay, I think I should read these further apart. You know, like they're kind of the same book, but I did have fun. So I will continue the series, but knowing that like it's kind of the same book over and over again with a little twist. The other romantic suspense novel that I read is called Don't Tell by Karen Rose, which is the first book in a very long romantic suspense series with like smaller arcs in it. This book had a lot more kind of depth to it, and I thought on a writing level, like it was much more well done. It follows a woman who years ago fled an abusive relationship with her husband, and she brought her son with her. And so she's living under an assumed name. She's best friends with the woman who was running the women's shelter that helped her kind of get back on her feet. She's been, you know, going through her education and working at the university as well. Her boss, who was previously a professor and is kind of like a father figure to her, just recently died. And so he's being replaced by the love interest, of course. So she's like grieving this very important figure in her life, meeting this new man, and they kind of, you know, form a connection. But also you get the perspective of her ex-husband and like the law enforcement in that town. And he is given reason to believe that she's still alive and still out there and left on purpose, which he did not previously think. So he starts going after her. So it's very like high stakes. Oh my gosh, the, you know, lives are on the line, but there's also a lot of emotional depth to it. Like there's, you know, grief, and she's raising a child and kind of coming to terms with that, and obviously dealing with the trauma of all these things that happened to her years ago. And there were also moments that were like fun or funny or like good, just kind of friendship vibes. Like there's a lot of time spent in this book just with characters, not really doing anything in particular, but just getting to know them. And I thought it was just all done really well. I keep saying this about every book, but it could have been tighter for sure, especially toward the end. There was a feeling that like every character had to have a conversation with all of the other characters about how things wrapped up. And it's like, we don't need to hear all of this, you know, let's just kind of cut to it. But I really am excited about the series. Spoiler alert, I'm reading the second book right now, and I feel like there's just a lot of potential. And I think this was her debut, Karen Rose. So I have a lot of hope for where this is going. And there are like more than 30 books in the series. So yes, I love to find a series to just sink my teeth into. Now that we've talked about romantic suspense, let's talk about regular suspense and mystery. Oh my gosh, Elise, what a great transition you've created. First up, we have Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. Not going to go into depth about this one because I already have. Check out my 2-part recap of this. And then we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, which I really was hoping to get a recap out before the movie came out, but that's okay. I actually feel like seeing the movie has helped me consolidate my thoughts a little bit more. So stay tuned, subscribe, and you will be getting an episode on that very soon. But it is a bad book, okay? Angels and Demons, like I had a lot of fun with that. The Housemaid, I had fun with in like a hate reading way. I don't recommend that book. I don't get the hype. Other than that, all the mystery kind of books that I read were like detective novels in series that I was already in the middle of. So first up, we have the Sue Grafton Kinsey Milhone series. I read G is for Gumshoe. These books are very iconic and like everybody knows about them, but nobody ever talks about them on book social media. So I don't have any idea of like whether I need to explain this series to you, but I will. Kinsey Milhone is a private detective in this like fictional small town in California in the 1980s. She's a really fun character, very fiercely independent. She's been divorced a couple times. She's honestly quite judgmental in a way that is very dated and very 80s. So like know that going in, but she's snarky and funny. And I think the audiobooks have kind of a Samantha Jones thing to them. This book in particular did not stick out to me. None of them really ever do. But I just have a good time with Kinsey every single time. I feel like they follow kind of the same beats. And by the way, my mom loves this series, and that's kind of why I got into it. As I already said, I love having a series where I know exactly what I'm going to get with every book, because if I want that, I know where to go. You know, it's the best. And then a series that I am actually obsessed with is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This year I read The Man Who Died Twice and The Bullet That Missed, which are books 2 and 3. Richard Osman just does so many things that no other authors can do for me. His books are actually funny. They're very emotional without feeling like overly sappy. They incorporate a lot of pop culture references, some of which I don't even get because I'm not from the UK, but he always explains like just the right amount to not alienate you if you don't know what it is, but then also not to bore you if you already do. You know what I mean? It's just so many authors have tried and he just does it so easily. Also, so many POVs, so many plot lines, and often when books are like that, I'm just bored by most of them and I'm like, get me back here. But with him, every chapter I'm like, oh yeah, what's Ibrahim up to? You know what I mean? It's just fun. I love these books so much. Every book so far has been better than the last. So I don't know how long he can keep that up, but I'm excited. I probably will catch up this year. Let's talk nonfiction next. I this year discovered reading nonfiction for pleasure, which I have never really done before. I think that I previously feel like I should read nonfiction or like I would be smarter if I read nonfiction. And this year I kind of got into reading a book because, oh, that sounds interesting to learn about. The same reason I pick up a fiction book, like that sounds like a fun story to be told. That sounds like a cool thing to learn. I only read 4 nonfiction, so it doesn't seem like, you know, a significant amount of my reading. But for me, it's only been like in the last 2 or 3 months that I've read 4 books. So that's like a huge increase. And I'm very much on a trajectory to read a lot more nonfiction in 2026, which I'm really excited about. My favorite one that I read was Going Clear, Scientology, Hollywood, and the Prison of Belief by Lawrence Wright, which is a book about Scientology. It's very much a deep dive. The tagline of this book in my mind is "The truth is stranger than fiction." Okay? These people are nuts. The founder, the people who run it now, all the people who are like defectors who talk about what happened to them when they were in it. It's just absolutely crazy. Am I kind of scared to be talking about it right now? Yes, I am, but it is wild. It's one of those that like you could read 30 minutes. I did the audio and I really liked it. You could listen to 30 minutes and have a list of 10 bullet points to share with someone. Like it's so densely packed with nutso information, okay? And I really enjoyed specifically the Hollywood portions because it's like people you know. It's not just a deep dive into this religion/cult that, you know, that stuff is interesting to me in itself, but also learning about Tom Cruise, John Travolta, like these people that you know, and you're never going to look at Scientology the same way again. I promise you that. I think this book strikes a balance in nonfiction that is hard to attain, which is that it feels like juicy and fun to learn about while also making me feel passionate about something. I feel riled up about this injustice, and I feel equipped with knowledge that if I were to face the right person, I would be prepared to employ, you know? Like if I'm at a dinner table and someone's like, Scientology, what is that? I could say, let me tell you about that. But also, I just really enjoyed learning these things and thinking about psychologically, who are these people and what is going on? It was just fun. Now, a similar book that I read after the fact was Under the Banner of Heaven, A Story of Violent Faith by Jon Krakauer, which is about the Mormon church, but also the fundamentalist Mormon church more so. The founding was the same. They were the same church, but then they divided over the issue of polygamy. The Mormons were getting a lot of flack from the Gen Pop about polygamy and like, hey, that's, you know, not moral and all of these things. And so Mormons that we think about today were like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. And FLDS were like, yeah, we do. We don't bow to anybody. So that's where that line was drawn. And so the FLDS church is still out there. They're still practicing polygamy. From what I understand, a lot has happened in the last couple of years with that. And I haven't really gotten into that. This book came out in the early 2000s. And by the way, you can definitely tell it's a little dated. They talk a lot about 9/11. So just so you know, there's also like some language that's a little bit outdated in my opinion. What are you going to do? Books come out and then they're out. So I read this book from a long time ago and it read like it was from a long time ago. I really enjoyed learning about the history of the church, hearing from defectors. I mean, it's just like the Scientology book in a lot of ways, but this one is much more focused on like a true crime case that involves the FLDS church. I was less interested in that. It gets into kind of the minutia of that case, the psychology of the perpetrator, the court case, like all of those things. And for me, I was more interested in the big picture stuff. I wish that it was more so just kind of a general view of the FLDS and Mormon religions and like the psychology of those things and the people who left in those stories. That was the part that I wanted more of. This book does not strike the juiciness balance that I was talking about with Scientology. It's that, not that book didn't make me outraged, because it absolutely did. There's a lot of injustice. It's scary, but this book is like disturbing in a way that one was not, both in the true crime aspect, but also in the polygamy aspect. There are young girls getting involved in things that are just really disturbing to read about. So please, proceed with caution. But I still would recommend it. Going Clear, I'm like, you gotta read this book. This book, I'm like, no, it was good. Interesting. If what I just talked about sounds like a book you'd like to read, I wouldn't discourage you. The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. These subtitles for the nonfiction, I swear. This is an interesting book and another one that I would recommend with a couple of caveats. I read this because this author wrote The Art Thief, which I really enjoyed. And this is another book that's like very short and kind of a deep dive into the psychology of a person who committed a crime, and also like the greater picture of that type of crime. And in this one, it's less so about crime. But essentially, this man named Christopher Knight, he went into the woods soon after graduating from high school in the 80s and lived in there by himself without really seeing anything from the outside world for decades. And then in the early 2010s, he was discovered stealing food from a summer camp, and he was locked up as a result. While Christopher Knight is in prison, Michael Finkel starts writing to him and develops kind of a relationship with him and gets information about this case and like, hey, why did you do that? Why did you leave society? Why did you steal from people? Because it was in the wilderness in Maine. He lived there. He did not have he didn't go to a store. He was off the grid entirely. And he was mostly just stealing from like nearby houses when people were away, because in Maine, it's really cold during the winter. So like almost no one lives there. It's mostly vacation homes in this area where he was. I found the survival aspect of this book to be super compelling. Like the way that he lived, the things that he stole, the kind of mentality that he had, I thought was really interesting. And I found him a very sympathetic person, even though he committed these crimes over years and years. You can tell that he felt remorse about it. He really did not want to like upset anybody or ruin anyone's life. I ended up really liking him and almost feeling uncomfortable with the fact that this book was written. I feel like he was not fully informed, or at least Michael Finkel didn't do enough to reassure me as the reader that Christopher Knight knew he was getting this information for the sake of writing a book. It felt unethical to me. There was something weird about it. And then there were also a lot of questions that I'm like, why didn't we dive into this more? Why did his parents not report him missing for over 20 years? That's weird. And why did he leave in the first place? Those topics are discussed in a way that I found very shallow, considering how insane that is. Like, this man, for no reason, pretty much, as far as we know, just left society entirely and stayed gone for years and years and years. Like, what is going on there? We didn't really dive into that as much as I would have liked. There's a lot of conversation about like, what is a hermit and what is this compulsion that people feel? Why would somebody maybe feel that way? Like, a lot of those conversations were interesting, and it was a very short book, and I liked the audio, but I don't know. There were just a lot of things that I'm like, really? Why didn't we go into that more? And also, do I feel okay about reading this book? Not entirely. I gotta speed it up. We are losing daylight. Okay, the last nonfiction I read, and probably the most egregious subtitle, Disney High, The Untold Story of the Rise and Fall of Disney Channel's Teen Empire by Ashley Spencer. So this book, I think, fits a very narrow demographic that I happen to fall into, which is people around my age. I was born in 1999 who grew up on Disney Channel, and that's me, okay? I don't know that someone in my mom's generation would necessarily want to read this, and I don't know that someone significantly younger than me who didn't grow up on Disney Channel would want to read this, because it kind of stops with like, I don't even know. I think the last show that it talks about is Wizards of Waverly Place, or Sunny with a Chance, maybe. So it pretty much ends with my generation, like what I ended watching. The beginning deals with why Disney Channel was created in the first place, why parents were craving this like easy watch that they could trust was appropriate for their children, you know, what the executives were talking about. Like, I found all of those things really interesting. It kind of goes in order by like Disney Channel icon through time. So we talk about like Hilary Duff, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, Raven-Symoné, like all of these different, stars. And I thought that chronological aspect was interesting, but also some of the things intersected. And so it was kind of weird. Like we talked about, I think Selena Gomez first, and then we talked about Demi Lovato, and those were largely happening at the same time, but it was talked about in segments. I don't know how I would have set it up, but I thought that was kind of strange. Also, the promise of like behind the scenes, the untold story. A lot of this is not the untold story. Most of the information that this woman obtained for this book was not like journalism that she conducted. It was public interviews that you may or may not have already seen. And I think nostalgia is so heavily valued by people in my generation that if you are online hardly at all and feel a lot of nostalgia for this time, you've probably already seen a lot of these things. You've probably seen the clips of Miley Cyrus on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about her time on Hannah Montana. But that is cited in this book. I found this to be more of a compilation of a lot of information that I'd already heard. Like probably 70% of the behind the scenes stuff that pertained to my childhood, I already knew. And it's not that it wasn't fun to listen to, but I have rarely read a nonfiction book that I feel like isn't teaching me more than this is. I do have something kind of mean to say, and I think it may be blasphemy, and so I warn you. But I thought that the audiobook of this was truly really terrible, and it's narrated by Lalaine from Lizzie McGuire. She did not do a good job. I'm so sorry. I liked Lizzie McGuire. I didn't watch it a ton. Lalaine was a perfectly adequate Disney Channel actress, but I found the audiobook narration of this to be very distractingly poorly read. The sentence inflection was weird. She mispronounced a lot of people's names. She said Julia Andrews instead of Julie Andrews. I mean, that is egregious. I'm sorry. And again, I admit to being a picky audiobook listener, but it was not that like the tone of her voice was a problem, because that's usually what it is for me, or like the way that somebody reads it. It's just that a lot of the sentences sounded very unnatural. And I had to rewind it and be like, what is this trying to say? And I don't think it was the fault of the writing. So I'm just saying, I was excited to see that it was a former Disney star reading this book, and I wish it hadn't been. I wish it had been an audiobook narrator. I feel so mean saying that, but it has to be said. I was trying to get my numbers up toward the end of the year, so I read a lot of novellas and short stories. I'm going to rapid fire through them, okay? I only have two, I think. Yeah, two that are not Christmas related. Most of them are Christmas related. Both of these are actually Amazon Prime, like free books. So I read them on my Kindle with the audiobook, and they're free for anyone who has Prime. So I highly recommend that experience, and I highly recommend both of these. Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood is like a kind of speculative romance between a vampire and a vampire hunter. I enjoyed it. I like Ali Hazelwood. And then Six Deaths of the Saint by Alex E. Harrow. This one is like a thought-provoking fantasy. It's one of those books that kind of thrives on you being confused and being like, what is going on? And then by the end, you realize what's going on and you're like, wait, should I reread this from the beginning? Maybe I should, because I kind of get it now. So I liked both of them. They didn't change my life, but generally novellas don't. Then we have 4 Christmas-themed novellas. Least to most recommended, we got to start it off with The Mistletoe Mystery by Nita Prose, which is in the Maid series. And this was the clincher. Is that a word? The clincher? This clinched. This clinched me. This made me realize for sure that I'm done with the Maid series by Nita Prose. It should have been one book. I liked the first book. There's just nothing else I need from this story. I find the main character, who I used to find very sweet and wholesome, is getting annoying to me. And it's not her fault. Like, it's just that I don't need to spend more time with her, you know? And this was not a mystery, by the way. It was very obvious what was going on. It was like a Christmas special, sappy. I just didn't like it. Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret by Benjamin Stevenson. This is from the like Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone series. So also like a Christmas novella mystery within an existing mystery series. This one was also not very good, but I at least had fun with it. I thought it was more in line with the other books in the series. And I also just like this series a lot more. So if you like that series, you know, read it. I don't think it really needs to be read outside of that, though. It's not that good. The Kill Clause by Lisa Unger. This was a free book also for Amazon Prime members, and I had a good time. I read this in the airport when I was on my way to Thanksgiving vacation. It's about an assassin who works for like an assassin organization and doesn't understand why she's being asked to kill the people she's killing, and she's kind of questioning those things for the first time. I had a good time reading this book. I don't think it's like amazing, but it was fun. And then we have Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, the only one of these that's like a serious novella. And it's not, you know, a Christmas novella, but it takes place at Christmas. And for me, it reads kind of like Gift of the Magi, or, you know, a Christmas classic like that, even The Christmas Carol. It's very snowy and cold and kind of sad. It's about an aspect of Irish history that I didn't really know. It has that feeling of like a Christmas movie or book that is more so about the sad aspect of the holidays. And I really like when media dives into that type of thing. I enjoyed this one. It feels like the type of book that I would reread later in life and get more out of. I read 4 dystopian novels this year. First one is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which is of course the latest prequel in the Hunger Games series. I love the Hunger Games series. And this is the first book in that series that I felt like I wish this didn't exist, or like it doesn't need to exist. I know a lot of people felt that way about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I really enjoyed that one. And it has that kind of like Easter egg quality that a prequel tends to, where it's like, oh, that's that person's grandpa or whatever. Or like, ooh, that's the beginning of this thing that we know from later in the series. I really enjoyed that aspect in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. For me, Sunrise on the Reaping felt like that, but a lot more forced. It felt like fan service. It felt more kind of obvious. And on that same kind of note, I felt very aware of attempts by the author to make me emotional. It felt like being on a theme park ride and all the lights turn on and you see what is actually there as opposed to what kind of the effect is of the ride. Like I could see the strings being pulled in the puppet show of, oh, I'm supposed to get emotional here. I'm supposed to feel, you know, whatever. I didn't feel that way in any of the rest of the books in the series. And I know that for a lot of people, they did get really emotional with this book, and I just didn't feel that at all. So maybe it's me. I don't know. I'm really excited about the movie, actually. I just saw the trailer, and I think it's going to be great. I still enjoyed it in the way that I enjoy all the Hunger Games books, but it was by far my least favorite in the series, which I did not expect at all going into it, and I'm kind of sad to say it. The Running Man by Stephen King. If there was ever a book to signify why I don't usually buy books at full price, this is it. Because no way would I have finished this book had I not spent like $16 on it or whatever. I like having the freedom to drop a book and feel like it's, you know, no harm to me. I didn't pay money for it. I've read a lot of Stephen King. I understand that he uses words that I wouldn't personally use, and he expresses attitudes that I don't personally have, but I generally like him as a person and as an author. And I think that a lot of times books that he writes that have those problems have a lot of redeeming qualities that make me not willing to look past those things, but make me willing to get through those things and rate the books accordingly. This book had no redeeming qualities other than a strong concept. It's like a dystopian concept, kind of a reality show bounty hunter situation. Like you sign up to basically be hunted, and the longer you last, the more money you make for your family. All the characters are unlikable. The sheer volume of like slurs in this book, and fat phobia and homophobia and racism and sexism, it's like horrifying. I hated everyone so much, especially the main character, that like I didn't care what happened to him. Okay. I'm not feeling stressed, and I know that I should because it's a stressful situation. I feel like the movie's probably good and I will watch it, but I was just so shocked by how horrible I found this book. It's tied with The Housemaid for my least favorite book of the year. Don't read this. I'll report back on whether I think you should watch it, but do not read it. On to a more positive note, we have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This book was definitely more of like a literary take on a dystopian novel, and I thought it was very thought-provoking. There are so many passages in this book that I found just, yeah, they made me think about life and like learning and what it means to be in a community and all of those things. It's very sad and reflective, and that's like not the tone that I tend to love. I also just took a while to get into it. At the beginning, you have no idea what's going on, and that's totally by design. And there's also very much a distance that you're kept at from the characters and the narrator in particular. And that's also on purpose. Like I don't think that's a problem with the book. It just made me not feel super into it right away. The people who love this book are like, best book I ever read. I don't get that. I don't feel that. I'm glad other people do, but I think it's good. And the final dystopian novel I read was The One by John Mars. I really enjoyed this. This is like pure drama fun. This is the book you want to be reading when you're on an airplane. Like it is just, it's a blast. Twisty turny. The premise of this book is that there is a company that basically does like a dating match service via DNA. And so you submit your DNA, and if you are found to have a perfect match, it is sent to you and that person is supposedly going to be the one for you. And I think there are like 4 or 5 different POV characters that we follow. And John Marrs kind of just explores the implications of a piece of technology like this, the ways in which that could manifest in somebody's life. And I thought it was a lot of fun. The audiobook is really good. It's a full cast and I think it's really well done. I know this is the first in a series called, I think, Dark Future. And I'm definitely curious to read more. I've never read from this author before. He has like 1 million books. And the final category / genre, you guys, is fantasy. And I'm really ending on a low because this was definitely the genre I flopped in the most. I didn't continue any series that I'm in the middle of or that I was in the middle of before, which is several. I started 3 new series, finished 1 of them, and for some reason I only read YA, which not that that's a problem, but I didn't read any adult fantasy this year. The one series that I did both start and finish this year was The Heartless Hunter duology by Kristen Ciccarelli. And this book, I don't even know how to talk about because the first one I totally loved. I ate it up in like a day and a half, okay? And it's not a short book. I had so much fun. It's about a witch who's like kind of this vigilante justice witch, almost like a witch Underground Railroad operator, a witch Harriet Tubman. Being a witch is like illegal in this society. And so she's secretly a witch, but she's also secretly helping to get a lot of witches safe harbored from the law. And then there's a witch hunter. And these two have a romance, okay? So he doesn't know that she's a witch and he doesn't know that she's the Crimson Moth, who is the person that he's hunting down. So there's a lot of tension there. I really enjoyed the romance. I thought it was super fun. And then the second book was just completely unnecessary. For me, if you're gonna do a fantasy romance duology, you have to do one of 2 things. You either have to make the romance such that it is stretched out across 2 books. You cannot have them get together in the first book because I have to want them to get together, or you do 2 different couples in the 2 different books, like the Shepherd King duology, Elements of Cadence duology. Like, you can focus on a new couple. And not that the other couple can't have a little bit of drama. I'm not interested in starting the second book and having it be like, just kidding, they're not together. We're gonna keep doing the same thing a little bit longer for no reason. Like, it just bothered me. Also, I was really uncomfortable with how physical this romance was for a YA book. I feel like such a prudish person saying that. It wasn't like explicit sex, but so much of the relationship is based on physical connection. And that just made me feel weird. I'm sorry. It just feels like the people who say like, oh, there's not enough spice in YA, one. And those people are wrong, okay? There shouldn't be a lot of spice in YA. It's YA. Then we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So I read the first book. I love A River Enchanted and a Fire Endless, the Elements of Cadence duology, which I just mentioned. So good. So perfect. I feel like everybody loves Divine Rivals more, and I did not. It's hard not to compare. It's not that this book was bad. I still really loved it. It didn't like stick with me. This was definitely an earlier in the year read, and it was good. And I probably will finish the series. It's just 1 more book. Oh, and then actually there's the new one, Wild Reverence, that came out. And I probably will read that. And then finally, we have the Ember in the Ashes and Ember in the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir. So I read the first 2 books, An Ember in the Ashes and A Torch Against the Night. And I loved these books. I actually only stopped reading them because they were making me too stressed. This time I was reading books like on my Kindle before I went to bed so that I wouldn't be on my phone. And I would like stay up too late and my heart was pounding because these books are stressful as hell. Just like Heartless Hunter, these are more mature YA, but not because of sex, because of like violence. And yeah, they're pretty dark, honestly. There are 4 books in this series and I will definitely be continuing and wrapping up the series this year. And I know there's also a spin-off series. I think it's 2 books, but there's only 1 out so far. So anyway, love this series. So good. I remember I was on the treadmill at the gym reading the first book and I started it at the gym, which is like not a recipe for loving a book because there are just a lot of distractions and everything. I was so into this and it's the perfect treadmill book. I really should get back into it because I've been reading on the treadmill on my Kindle again. A good stressful fantasy is ideal for that because it just makes you walk faster. Like you feel stressed out and you're channeling it into your workout. It's honestly a great tactic. If your New Year's resolution is to read more books and get fit this year, try it out. So that is a very long-winded review of every book I read in 2025. I hope you enjoyed. I had so much fun. I'm so excited to be back and I cannot wait. 2026 is going to be our year. I hope you enjoyed this episode and will subscribe for future ones. and that we'll get to hang out again one day soon. And it will be soon, okay? I promise you that. And I will see you then. Bye.